In my first video, the one for which I was awarded the Nobel Prize, I rambled about how poor writers and dumb fanboys had Batman become more unappealing than the details on your father's colonoscopy by making him an invincible god who can beat anyone with the mythical and never elaborated on prep time. Well, watch me throw away any shred of credibility I might have had with my former rantings by saying that if Spider-Man was properly written, he would be absolutely invincible. I am a man of contrasts. Also, I have no shame. But let's start by answering a simple question. Who is Spider-Man? Well, for the 3 people living in the Himalayas who happen to not pay attention to pop culture in the past 25 years, Spider-Man is the most profitable character at Marvel. Also, he is the protagonist of America's first ever harem manga. You know what a harem manga is, right? Those rom-com mangas where some loser for absolutely no reason is surrounded by beautiful women who all want to become the fleshy garden to his naughty seed? Well, that's the basis of Spider-Man. Being an absolute Yamcha loser, gaining superpowers, using them for justice, and having a body count that would have Hugh Hefner give him a thumbs up from beyond the grave. No, really. Just look at the absolute plethora of women he dated. Betty Brant, Gwen Stacy, Liz Allen, who was never sprayed with web fluid but sure wanted to, Felicia Hardy, who is pretty much Marvel's Sydney Sweeney, Mary Jane Watson, Silver Sable at least once, Silk, and let's not forget that Sue Storm flirted with him at least one time. But let's be real, Sue Storm flirts with everyone. Reed Richards is Marvel Comics poster boy for being the guy who was gifted a Nintendo Switch by his wife's boyfriend after waking up from his vasectomy. There was also that time Rogue switched powers with Nightcrawler, met Spidey, and immediately got all dehydrated for him. And here I thought Rogue couldn't get any hotter. Oh, and that other time, She-Hulk dressed as a maid and went to meet with Johnny Storm, who was dressed as Spider-Man, so they could go to a costume party. I mean, when I first saw this, I thought Spidey had exchanged radioactive fluids with Bruce Banner's hot cousin. I was wrong, but considering Peter's track, can you blame me? And most recently, after the announcement of Marvel vs. Capcom Collection, the entire internet started shipping Spidey with Morrigan from the Darkstalkers franchise, and I approve of this. Well, there is also some baloney about power and responsibility in the Spider-Man mythos. Some old dude dies, another guy cries and becomes a meme. Joe Quesada makes it clear how much he hates Spider-Man fans, and Zendaya uses the hero's fame to catapult herself into superstardom thanks to nepotism. That's the basis of Spider-Man. I don't really need to elaborate much more. Now, I honestly believe that when Stan Lee and Steve Ditko created him, they accidentally made him one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe. One who has to be constantly nerfed, otherwise he would Saitama his enemies every time he met them. So let's discuss Mr. Parker's many abilities, shall we? Now, I am well aware that comic books are not known for their consistency, so what I'll do here is try to take an average from every Spider-Man material I could get my grubby hands into. Also, I'm talking about 616 Spider-Man, and 616 Spider-Man only. I will ignore any other version for the sake of simplicity. By the way, 616 is the mainline comic book universe, not the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Get your facts straight, normie! First of all, let's talk about strength. Spider-Man is definitely not on the same level of Marvel's super heavyweights. Guys like The Thing, Thor, Colossus, and the Hulk. Now, the Marvel Database, ever the reliable source, explains that Spider-Man is able to lift a minimum of 10 tons. Let's go even further and remember that one time where he lifted an entire train, a thing estimated to weigh around 40 tons. Not only that, he body slammed a tank, helped the plane land by acting as a landing gear, supported a daily bugle building, calculated to weigh between 365,000 and 533,000 tons with no help. And the most impressive feat of all, was able to lift Jay Leno's massive chin with a single hand. With that said, it's no wonder that he's more than able to hold his own with some of Marvel's heaviest hitters, being able to one-shot Luke Cage, a guy whose whole shtick is being invulnerable, smacked and hurt the Thing, took a punch from Hercules after making out with his estranged wife, mark another win for Spidey, and lived to tell the tale, held his own against Namor, whose strength is unmatched when near water, and they were near water, and even was the sparring partner of one Carol Danvers, who is full of cosmic power and capable of bench pressing the moon if she so wishes. In many occasions, when he had enough, Spidey more than outclassed his villains. Like that one time he pummeled a Rhino into an inch of his life, and lest we forget, Rhino is a guy that fought on almost equal grounds with the Hulk in the past. Also, who can forget that one occasion where Spidey destroyed the Kingpin, or when Solid Snake punched him and he didn't even flinch. Punisher? Is this the Punisher? Why does he look like Solid Snake? Oh, never mind, I don't care. Anyway, next one is speed and agility. Spidey is more nimble than a Leonardo DiCaprio avoiding women his own age and is capable of evading regular bullets and lasers. If you forgot your science classes in school, laser is light. So, a laser shot is basically something fired at the speed of light and Spider-Man can avoid it. Not impressed? Okay, how about this? Spider-Man was once faster than an explosion that devastated an entire city block. Now take that, you stupid doggo from Independence Day! Spidey is also fast enough to give Daredevil's senses a run for their money, and Matt Murdock's perception is so absurdly heightened that he can smell when your blood pressure rises. Yes, lady, I said smell. I love comic books sometimes. Finally, we have the Spider Sense, which can roughly be translated as a sixth sense that alerts Spider-Man about dangers around him. But it's so much more than that. Remember the first Sam Raimi movie? Of course you do. The scene where Peter feels the Spider Sense for the first time? What a great scene that I can't put here, otherwise this video will be copyright claimed by Sony. Anyways, in that moment, Peter has an almost omniscient comprehension of his environment, aware of everything happening around him and trying to pinpoint where the danger that he's feeling is coming from. Well, the Spider Sense can be defined as this superspatial awareness which allows Spidey to know where everything around him is all the time. Before I forget, Peter Parker has a genius level intellect. Yes, another one. Comic books are full of those. He is smart enough that Reed Richards, world's smartest man, who decided that the best way to defeat an omnipotent witch was to stretch his arm towards her, once admitted to being jealous of him for finding a solution to a problem he couldn't. In fact, guys like Tony Stark and Hank McCoy, some of the greatest minds of the Marvel Universe, both acknowledged Spidey as an extremely intelligent man, albeit unfocused, as Richards once put it. In fact, his Spider Sense, together with his high intellect, allows him to be a jack of all trades in the science field and see the world through a prism that others cannot, allowing him to find solutions that his colleagues are unable to. Not to mention, he's a good strategist, able to come with plans on the spot to fight his enemies and usually quickly gaining the upper hand on them. Now, let's do a Captain Planet and join all these powers together. Super strength that allows him to lift buildings, super speed and agility with whom he is capable to avoid light speed projectiles, a permanent hyper-awareness of his surroundings, and a genius level intellect, capable of developing not only combat strategies on the spot, but technology capable of neutralizing his foes once he has gained enough knowledge on them. Now, tell me that a guy with all these perks wouldn't be an absolute unit. In fact, Spidey was more than capable of taking down the X-Men during the Secret Wars and the Avengers, which at the time included heavyweights like Captain America, Carol Danvers, She-Hulk, Blade, Black Panther, and Thor, all by himself. Why then? Why then, by Jove, writers make Spider-Man such a jobber so many times? Well, if you ask me, there are two reasons: lazy writing and the need to make him an underdog. The lazy writing is somewhat simple to explain, so let's start with it. First of all, the problem doesn't rely on the writers alone, but on the lack of a competent editor-in-chief at Marvel. Now, an editor-in-chief's job should be to have reunions with the writing staff every month and lay clear rules of what they can and cannot do with the characters as they write. For example, establish that the Avengers are in another planet, the X-Men are in Krakoa, the Fantastic Four are dealing with Namor in Atlantis. Is it Namor or Namor? I'm confused now. Whatever. The Hulk is in Russia for some reason, and Spider-Man is entangled in a war against the Sinister Six and the Kingpin. Henceforth, the writers should be in constant contact, so no one scripts something that may contradict what the other did. If Spider-Man is merged with the alien symbiote during his arc against the Sinister Six, then the symbiote cannot be used in anyone else's stories. If the Hulk fights Ultron in Russia, then the villain cannot be the reason why the Avengers are off-planet, so on and so forth. Needless to say, this doesn't happen. Every writer is free to do whatever, so stories constantly contradict each other and have to be retconned, and any reader who pays attention to what is happening is punished for his devotion to continuity. As for the lazy writers, well, that's just what many of them are. Lazy. Every month, dude or gal has to write a new 20 plus pages, create an arc for the character of whom they got custody of, have a first, second, and third act, and a satisfying conclusion, and let's just say most writers just don't have the fire to do that. Not everyone is a Paul Dini, passionate about comics to a fault. They just want to finish their job, send it to their publisher, do some networking and kiss ass so they can get a Netflix contract and spend 15 hours a day on X telling everyone how much better they are than the rest of mankind. To be fair, this is not just a modern problem. Many writers over the decades wrote absolute garbage stories where Spider-Man was completely devastated by common enemies. If you read any what-if stories with regularity, you know how those comics ignored everything about Spider-Man and just killed him again and again for shock value. The comic book industry, like any other, is full of incompetent people who failed their way to the top, either because they had the right connections or exuded confidence and initiative, which, as Shady Durags once said,
"She's got confidence and initiative, which accomplishes a lot more than competence and apathy."
You guys should watch Shady Durag's content, he's great. Now, the other problem with Spider-Man's writing is a bit more complex to explain, and that is... First of all, Spider-Man was conceived as a representation of comic book readers. Okay, riddle me this. Who enjoys comics? Nerds! Real nerds, I mean. Guys and girls who were bullied mercilessly in school and alienated by their peers for enjoying something that wasn't mainstream. Curiously, the same bullies who started pretending to have always enjoyed superheroes after the MCU made such characters popular, but I digress. Peter Parker was a shy, nerdy high schooler, one bullied by the jocks who had no friends, was despised by girls, and had as his only companions his aging uncle and aunt. He is what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko envisioned when they read the letters from their fans. So what better way to pay tribute to their readers and make some more shekels along the way than creating someone who mirrored such fans but was also perceived as being amazing. Spider-Man is the ultimate power fantasy for a nerdy kid. He is someone that doesn't fit society but is, nevertheless, a remarkable individual. We all felt awkward at some point growing up, and Spider-Man speaks to that side of us, as if telling that no matter how weird and shunned we feel, we can always do better and be spectacular if we try hard enough. even without his powers. Problem is, he can never not be the underdog. Spider-Man was conceived as being a loser, the universe's chew toy, a guy who has problems at school, at work, is always broke, has to care for his ancient aunt, has a complicated marriage, when said marriage is not being erased by the devil, has the media against him, cops against him, and despite all of his problems, he never gives up on doing the right thing and using his powers for good. That is his essence, and his essence is both the blessing and the curse of Spider-Man and every other superhero created on the last century. Superheroes, both from DC and Marvel, are created in specific periods of time and comprised of certain ideas that define every incarnation that they might have in the decades to come. The Hulk is the unbridled rage of a broken man. Captain America embodies the ideals of his country, Superman represents truth, justice, and the American way, Spawn is the incarnation of how over-the-top ridiculous and awesome the 90s were, and you got what I mean by now, right? These traits are what define comic book characters and make them immediately recognizable to their audience. At the same time, said traits are such an intrinsic part of who the heroes are that they cannot be changed. Otherwise, the characters become something completely different and no longer the creatures we fell in love with. For example, take Wolverine. His story was retconned more than once, but his essence never changed. He is the perpetually angry short Canuck who sneaks first and asks questions never. He is also over 200 years old and never ever tried to fix his short temper. Pardon my French, but that's bull. People change with age. Well, some people station at a point, but not if they are active like Logan, who is always traveling around the world, meeting people, kicking name and taking asses. This may be sacrilege, but my favorite version of Wolverine is the one from X-Men Evolution, where he's like an old samurai, grumpy but wise, always looking after the kids and trying to impart some knowledge into them. But then again, that is not Wolverine's essence. He has to remain the short-fused X-Men forever, or his fans will throw a fit. The same happens with Spider-Man. He has to be represented as the absolute loser, who almost always comes short no matter how hard he tries. If anyone wrote him appropriately, using his powers to their full extent, he would be absolutely unstoppable, capable of bodying anyone and everyone that ever stood in his way with no problem whatsoever. He would no longer be an underdog. He would lose his essence and stop being Spider-Man. Now, is there a way to fix this? I think so. And here is how I would do it. By allowing Peter Parker to grow up. Not the answer you guys were expecting, I suppose, but allow me to elaborate. I gave up on collecting comic books a long time ago. I still read them once in a while, but I mostly abandoned this hobby, and I can pinpoint the exact moment that happened, when One More Day was published. That story arc was the ultimate slap on the fans' faces, if you ask me. Deleting 30 plus years of lore in the blink of an eye, just because some people at Marvel, I'm looking at you, Joe Quesada, wanted Peter Parker to be perpetually in teenage limbo, where his life never progressed past his pre-marriage phase. So, how would I fix the underdog problem? Well, I would allow him to become an adult and give him a new plethora of problems, all related to grown-up life. Now, full disclosure, I've seen some images of a recent arc about Pete and MJ married with kids. I didn't dare to read it because I don't trust Marvel. I know it will end badly and my heart can't take such disappointment again. If any of the ideas I propose next are being used in that story, well, it was a freak coincidence, what can I say? Okay, so, I would have Peter be married with MJ and 2 ugly kids. Instead of having him miss the prom because he had to leave early and fight the Vulture, Make him miss his son's baseball game or his daughter's ballet recital because he was stopping Carnage from eating an entire puppy orphanage. Make MJ slowly get fed up with him not being present in his kids' lives and not carrying his own weight as a father and head of the house and eventually blow up at him. Have his children slowly develop powers and show Peter consulting with Charles Xavier and the Fantastic Four, people who have experience with superpowered infants, to figure out what to do. Have him and MJ disagree on how to guide their offspring in using their abilities, one of them thinking it would be great if they followed in their father's footsteps, the other disagreeing vehemently. You know what? Just copy the first Incredibles. There! That movie should be the blueprint for anyone trying to write about superhero families. Also, being a father would make Peter more aware of the dangers and risks he faces every day. He would be forced to create new tech, maybe a new suit to better protect himself and make sure his kids wouldn't grow up having the last memory of their father as a splattered mess on a wall. As for his powers, allow him to be the unit he was meant to be, but create new adversaries, ones that he doesn't know or understand at the first meeting and that force him to devise new plans to properly defeat. When Peter is having trouble fighting some goblin dude that he faced 100 times for the past 40 years, it becomes a little tiring. It's not hard to allow a character to evolve and at the same time preserve the essence that kept him so relatable since he was created. All it takes is a little goodwill and competence, two things that have certainly been missing in comics for a long time. So, this is what I had to say about this. To everyone who watched the video up to this point, thank you. I hope you enjoyed my rantings. If you didn't, thank you for giving this a chance. For everyone who watched my video about Batman, thanks, really. Thank you so much. I can't believe how many people saw it and commented on it. Really, I was flabbergasted to see all the views I got on that. I never expected that. I thought that 3 guys would see it and one of them would cuss at my mom, but no, everyone was super cool and I'm very grateful to all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much. What else? Oh, yeah. Some people in the comments tried to identify the YouTuber's name guy that I mentioned, and they told me it could be the amazing PSM and another YouTuber whose name escapes me now. I should have written it. I'm sorry, I'm dumb. But I checked their channels and it wasn't any of them. I think the YouTuber that I mentioned on my past video has privated his channel or deleted it because I can't find any content that he made anymore. Which is a shame because his content was great. But anyway, if he shows up, I'll make sure to give him credit and tell you guys who he was. Anyway, that's it guys. Once again, thank you for watching and I'll be back very soon. In the meantime, always remember, there are no bad ideas or bad characters, only bad writers. See you guys.